Welcome to the Sacad Guled Show, your front row seat to the journey of leaders, innovators, and change makers, redefining what's possible. I'm your host, Sacad Guled, and today I have my guest here, Amy Amon. Amy, welcome.
Hi, welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So, Amy is an HR consultant and executive coach from Minneapolis. She helps companies grow by building strong people, operations, and providing fractional HR support. With over 20 years of global experience across Europe and Asia, Amy has led HR and talent management through time of growth and change. She also coaches leaders with special focus on international professionals and expats. Outside of work, she's remodeling her 100-year craftsman bungalow here in Minneapolis. What an exciting time,
It
Amy.
is. It's exciting. It's all good.
Awesome. Do you want to tell people, even though I gave introduction, I feel like it's more fitting if you want to tell our listeners who Amy Amon is?
Sure. So, as Sad said, Amy Amon, and I'm from Minneapolis, from the area. I have lived overseas for 20 years, working in a variety of global organizations in HR functions. And now I'm back in the US supporting companies, small organizations, and leaders and making sure that they're functioning well. They have the things in place they need to function and just have everything to succeed. I like the small companies. I like being at the nexus of the organizations and really seeing the growth and the maturation. It's fulfilling. It's kind of my next career.
No, I love it. I love it. And those who don't know, I've known Amy for quite some time now, and we've done a lot of great work together, a lot of
Mm,
exciting work. And when Amy says fractional HR,
mm.
Amy, not a lot of people know the term
Yeah.
fractional. Do you really want to explain what that means?
Fractional is maybe it's a new term. Some people don't wonder, they wonder what it's about. It's really fractional, it's part-time. So good, great for companies who don't need a full-time executive in the organization. There's a spectrum, I think, of the way is exhibited. We're really working with the organization, working with the leaders, and advising on what they need to do, but also being a pair of hands as needed. So it can be a blend. Some people say it's a consultancy reformed, or is it project work reformed? I think there's a place for everything, and definitely, um, but it's a part of not full time, but working with the organization as an external. So you have that distance of kind of clarity, but also working with the organization, being a part of their operations, what they're doing, but not on a full time basis.
Awesome. And when you say companies that don't need full time,
Mm.
when do you need full time? Or, in fact, the better question is, when do you need HR at all as a
Mm.
business owner?
Well, of course, I would say probably you need it right away as soon as you've got sales or any people for sure. You're even thinking about hiring people. Definitely in terms of a full time, maybe in house person, there are some metrics around maybe 30, 50 people. But I've even been in house with 20 people and maybe carrying some other operational roles. But it's helpful to have someone in HR function in, either internal or external capacity to support, to make sure that you've got the foundations, you're set up correctly, especially in states like Minnesota where there's more labor laws coming out and more things you have to deal with yourself as a business owner. It's just helpful to have someone on your side. Like you have your marketing people, your IT professionals, they really know what they're doing. And these, HR function as a staff function can also help make sure that things are set up. And from the get go, it's easy to get off track and it's so easy to get on track as well, though, too. So to your point, early on is always good.
Early on. And I can piggyback that because even sometimes when you hire employees,
Mm.
one of the first things that they will ask you is, do you have an HR person?
Mm. Oh, do they?
And
Okay.
yeah, and then if the answer is no, they might feel, some kind of way that, oh my God, if anything happens, who am I going to talk to?
Yeah.
So I think having a HR rep, either fractional or a full time, I think is very beneficial to your business. And ever since we've worked together, our life has been a lot easier.
Mm.
So I appreciate you and the work that you
It's
do
good.
and the people that you really advise. Uh, all of the years that you were in HR,
Yeah.
what is the wildest thing that you that you encountered as an HR professional?
Yeah, this story is kind of crazy. It actually wasn't really luckily in the States. It was crazy. So when I was working in Germany, so of course I was working in Germany
Oh,
as
okay, okay.
international, as you know,
You
international.
speak German?
Sicher.
Wie geht's?
Sehr gut, danke.
Okay, good. My
Und,
two words.
und
My
aus.
two words. Okay.
Yeah, and of course to speak German. And but I was working for an international organization, and there was an expat from another country that was, coming as a secondee from the mother country. And this guy had a little much too much to drink at a party, and he was driving back home to his house in, German city. I won't name it.
Name the
Might
names.
no names. Yes,
Okay,
all
okay.
well. This innocent parties shall remain, anonymous. He wasn't super innocent. He was driving home, decided to stop his car on the road. Now the details are a little bit fuzzy years later, but there was an accident and someone died.
Oh,
And this was years ago. Things were different. He was not taken into custody, but the next day, his people kind of shipped him off back to the home country. There's little, of course, suspicion or rumors as to what happened. If there was some payout, ultimately, I don't know the truth at this point. But in terms of office ramifications, you can imagine the kind of chaos and stories and all the talk the next days and what happened with this person. So definitely not a great example of good leadership, good judgment, respecting culture, respecting his role as a leader. And definitely we had a lot of fallout in the organization dealing with the team and just kind of trying to calm people down and kind of
oh,
recalibrating. Yeah, that was
that's
pretty wild. Yeah, talk about a kind of a PR crisis from a personal perspective.
no, that's really unfortunate. And you really think that leadership, everything, the culture, it starts at the top, right? But
Absolutely.
when it's committed by somebody at that level,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
always like very shocking. And because I'm really big on culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
the culture that you set is the performance that you're gonna receive.
Right.
As a business owner, when you set the culture of the company from the get go, how people should be really respect each other, set boundaries, and all of that is something that I really like to set from the get go. But talking about the leadership at the top, committing stuff like that,
Right.
it's really insane.
Well, setting it and then of course maintaining it. And that's what I think you do that. And that's important. And that's one thing I like to work with, see that my clients are, whether they have, official mission and values, which is great, but just kind of have that imbue that sense of this is who I am, this is how I want my organization to be, and this is how I want my people to be around me as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and hopefully a lot of people can take that, can take that away from what Amy said. As leaders, setting the culture, setting the boundaries, and maintaining it is really important. Since we're touching this topic, recently there was a big headline about the Astronomer CEO
Mm.
that was spotted at Coldplay concert, right?
What? Who's heard about that?
Right, right. Of course, caught cheating, and it got people talking about blurred lines and personal conduct in the workplace situations like employee dating, crossing
Yeah.
boundaries, or engaging in misconduct can come up too, right?
Yeah.
How do you, as an HR leader, handle situations where employees cross the line, or have you had any experience where you've seen such behavior?
Well, in terms of crossing the line, ultimately, ideally, and it's easy to you set a line early on. That's the thing we should do, right? And of course, what we should do, and what often happens, is are three different things. Especially for small companies or small teams where they work together, people work together. It's easy for lines to get crossed if, and again, that's having that kind of internal compass, especially by the leaders, to uphold this. Their role models, what they do, casts out to everyone else. People see them and people see whatever they do and amplify it, 10x for sure, minimum. So whatever small thing they do, people are going to interpret that in a really large fashion. So sure, if there's some sort of touching between people or family members is a classic one, people will take that and really blow it up in terms of how they view that activity, especially in the not good one or not the good way. In terms of your question, if I've seen this,
Yeah. Any experience, or have you ever encountered two employees crossing that line? You know, you know, dating or doing something that is going against the company, rules and regulations.
well, that's I'm going to come back. Yes, I have. And if the company doesn't clarify if they allow relationships or want it, and I always recommend in small organizations, if you can like see your team and literally talk to them, just have a no friends, no family, no dating policy. And if you do, be really, really clear about that and have that dialogue around
Okay.
the clarity that these people are in a relationship, and to make that agreement in whatever form or fashion to separate the work from the personal relationships.
Would employee handbook come into place in this type of scenarios? Then you said you have to really say that from the get-go, where
Yeah.
dating and stuff like that's not allowed. And sometimes even if you call people and give them an orientation, it's about he say she say, right?
Right.
People always go, oh, I was never told. So would you tell
Yeah.
small business owners how important employee handbook is, and how can that save you from a lot of headaches?
Right. Well, yeah, the handbook is important to have that and have that guideline for you as the owner to think about, what do I want? Do I maybe sometimes people go into business with a family member or with a spouse. So already there, you're setting that up. So you can't really not allow it for other people. Or if you do, then you need to say why you have a relationship with your spouse and then they can't, right? Or if you allow maybe I can imagine startups where there's people, a couple might come in, but just again, have that clarity around the delineation of what you're allowing or not allowing. Um, Keep communication open. Definitely would try not to have people reporting to each other if there's a relationship. And of course, I've seen it where in certain industries, it's just kind of part and parcel. And maybe there's a lot of turnover in the industry. So that's not okay, but it's maybe a little more accepted, like in some hospitality or some industries, it's going to happen. But then it's also, I think, how much you allow, going back to the policy thing or handbook, is how much drama do you want to accept, or are you willing to accept in your organization? Because it will happen. So I'm answering your question in a couple different perspectives, because there's no right or wrong, and you don't have to say, no, I won't have any relationships. You can, but make that clear, right? That's what I would recommend to business
Yes.
owners. And if you do, make that clear as well, and then but always working with the dynamics of what you're gonna come up with.
No, I think that's right, because having that expectations from people,
Mm,
putting that in the employee handbook, giving it to the new
mm,
hire, and making sure that they give you a receipt, make sure that they understand what's in hand, and stuff like that is very crucial, and it's very
yeah,
very, because I've learned this from
yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah.
When I first started my business, I didn't know what employee handbook was, who to go. So we all learn, right, in
Right,
the process.
right.
So definitely something that I've learned throughout the years. And let me ask you this: if there's a scenario where two people were in,
Mm,
and one accused the other,
mm,
and it's he say versus she say, because I'm sure that happens in the modern world
every
way
day.
too many times.
Yeah.
How would you handle that? What would be the proper way to go about that?
Well, the proper way is, is to have a handbook and have a policy around it.
Yeah.
You think it should be common sense, but it's not. People will breach boundaries, personal and ethical and sort of moral. Morality is a spectrum all the time. Of course, there are laws around discrimination and adverse actions toward people based upon their gender or other, protected class characteristics. So we do want to, from a legal perspective, make sure we're aware of that. And so, first off, is having clarity and communication to, for sure, people in power in a leadership position, but also all employees that, I say very simply, keep your hands to yourself. Don't touch people if they don't want to. Just,
Just go there for
yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. Show up, keep your hands to yourself, keep your nose clean. So we do want to make sure that we communicate that. It's our obligation as an employer to clarify that what's acceptable and what's not. So we kind of avoid oh, I was never told, right? We have to do that. So I hate clobbering or coming in with policy and handbook as the first thing. It is fundamental, like in any business or in any organization, you just kind of have your walls and your infrastructure and your plumbing, and policies and clarity around acceptable behavior is a key fundamental thing to have. So have that in place. And when we counter that someone has breached that code of conduct, then the discussion comes, well, we have an investigation, see really what happened, and try to involve the people, other people who maybe have witnessed it or who can shed more light to the situation, and then have that conversation. And usually it's going to be separation, if not at least a significant disciplinary action.
So you're saying if someone accused another person that
Mm,
something that was not true and
mm,
there's no true fact
mm,
findings, the punishment will be or the outcome will be separation because sometimes I've heard stories where um, a manager might not really be favorable to one employee of what
mm.
they want, right? Because employees can be really demanding. Oh,
Sure.
I can't come at this certain time of the day.
Yeah.
I can't really do this, and they feel like the manager is kind of mean to them.
Yeah.
But in return, as a retaliation, they want to lie about the manager, right? We're talking about things that happen at the actual corporate world, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if that comes and that employee lies about their manager, and there are no any significant witnesses or findings, what will be the 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 true outcome? Is what I'm trying to say. What would be
Mm.
the best case scenario for those people? Because who do we believe here? Is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and to use your examples had around the coming later, or they don't let me do whatever I want, I'm paraphrasing what you said. I actually roll the whole thing back. And I think we said a minute or so ago about expectations and role clarity and making sure that what you're asking the employee to do in the organization is clarified, and they know that. And they know that I need to show up at a certain time. I need to perform work to a certain standard. I need to comport myself in a certain way. And therefore, the manager isn't being mean if they're asking that person to do something. Of course, people will have, they like people maybe better, or more than one other person. But in terms of, which is fine and natural, but in terms of upholding our performance standards and what we expect you as an employee to do your work in a good way, that's fairly immutable in most situations. And so I'd separate that personal dispute almost. I won't ignore it, but separate that from the performance standards and roll back and say, hey, how can we work together in a straight, sober way? And you do your job, and not let the maybe some personal attitudes mix in.
Mm. No, that's great. That's great. Speaking of performance, evaluation,
Mm,
how often would you tell employers or small business owners
mm,
that they should do a performance review?
yeah.
How often during the year?
Got performance management.
Yeah.
That's how much time do we have here, right? It's
Right.
a whole book.
Yeah.
People talk about it. They write a lot of books about it all the time. It's if for small organizations, okay, the classic is the annual. I think that's too infrequent, especially because you miss the proximity of events. Quarterly is good to have a quarterly check-in. That's a good rhythm of time. You can look at some goals, look at some improvement or changes, whatever it is, and then act on that and see how things go. But definitely frequent check-ins is important. And for sure, if it's easy to say, I know it's hard to do, but if you're observing a misperformance, feedback as soon as possible in the moment in a private way is the best way for real performance feedback. But the more evaluation, I'd love to see quarterly is great, minimum half year in a
Have you?
little more formal capacity. Yeah.
That's
But always
awesome.
course correct along the way. Otherwise, then that, one time or two times a year conversation becomes a clobber over the head. And rule number one is it should not be a surprise. Feedback should not be a surprise to a person.
No, and feedback's what really shapes us, right?
Yeah.
I've always, when you were younger, obviously, you think feedback's only criticism, where people really
Oh,
criticize you.
yeah. Yeah.
But
No.
it's something that can really improve your work life,
Right.
how you really approach people, how you really, go about your job and be
Yeah.
proactive, right? And I think the feedback is some of the most important things. So I've learned that throughout my career as well. When people give me a feedback, rather than getting agitated. It's something that really works works for me to take that in and use that as a fuel,
Mm.
be a better person, and be a better performer.
Can it resonates with me. Can I share a couple thoughts on the feedback thing?
Yes.
And again, that's a whole book, right? Or many, many books. But one is says when you're giving feedback is look at the performance standards. Opinions are really not feedback.
Yes.
So
Yes.
as a leader, I would really implore, you and your listeners to think, is this really relevant and useful? Is it just serving me? What's the goal of this comment I'm going to give? Kind of like the adage of, is it kind? Is it true? Does it need to be said? Whatever that one is. It's similar to that around feedback. Give it timely, but also I love the adage to say, catch people doing things right, not just things wrong, but also say, hey, great job, and tell them why it's a great job too. I really liked it when you did that because the customers really lit up and they responded well, or thanks for being proactive because it made sure we were ready to go the next day.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because you don't only have to highlight negatives,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
highlighting the positive can really can help
Of
the
course.
confidence of the
Well, yeah.
team member as well.
Another adage I've heard, and I think it's probably true, probably we can debate the numbers, is, one negative feedback will offset four positive ones. So I don't expect you to make a tally sheet and count it out, but definitely people do like to hear positive feedback. And it also helps course correct to make sure they're doing the right thing and they continue to do that too as
Yeah,
well. And not
yeah,
just avoid doing something that's wrong, but to keep on their way, on their track to do the good thing.
yeah. No, definitely makes sense. What is one challenge or one problem that people always come to you to? Some of the business owners,
Mm,
like
yeah,
like
okay.
like like me, what is a common challenge that they always talk
Yeah.
about that you really help them
Yeah.
with?
So, kind of two classic ones is my people aren't performing great.
Okay.
They're not doing their job,
Okay, as expected.
right?
Mhm.
And then the other one is maybe a little less nuanced, but I'm growing and I need help to grow, which are kind of sometimes two sides of a coin. But the classic one is they're not doing their job. And
Reminds you
then
of someone?
we, I know, lots of
Yeah,
managers,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and fair enough. We'd look at what's the job, and I know that especially when you're starting out, even yourself, do I know what I want this job to do, what I want them to achieve, and maybe a little bit of how I want them to do things. I know you have you're in your case too. You don't want to micromanage your people, and you don't have time to micromanage your people. That's why you're hiring them, is to do the work. But that's also that clarity and that maybe even vulnerability early on, especially for new business owners and or first time managers and hirers, is to think about what do I want this role to do and be, and how can I help this person set them up for success. But that's requiring that common feedback and common like dialogue as to what does this job look like, going back to performance expectations.
Awesome. And speaking of micromanaging, I know that's style that not a lot of people love. But is there a time where you help the leader? Because I know you also coach
Mm.
leaders, business owners like me. Was there a time where you really helped a leader who struggled to with micromanaging, and you completely reversed that and made him a better leader?
Well, yeah, one thing that really helps people is, worked with this, is like looking at the competence of the person and their own motivation, and to kind of take that distance of the view to say, I use manager Mike as my example,
Hmm.
and colleague Chris. Chris is competent. He or she's interested in doing the work, and to look at where does manager Mike need to drill down and really be in the weeds, or where are they okay to say, okay, Chris is doing a good job, let him go, let him do that, whatever he needs to do, and only kind of go in where there's a gap or where something is new for the person. Yeah, and so it's also a matter of helping that person, manager Mike, to realize I'm taking up all my time doing this guy's job, and why am I doing that? I'm silly to do his job. So yeah, that's kind of answering, that's getting your question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
No,
think that
no.
clarity of like you hired them to not, you're not doing their job, you don't do their job, and that's boo on you for doing their job, boo on you for having two jobs, yours and their job, but also looking at where can I let go, and maybe not to let go carte blanche, but to let go bit by bit.
Is micromanaging something that you're really born, or
Uh-huh.
it's something in your case you think it's something that people really adapt? And if so, um,
Mm.
how hard it is to coach somebody to not micromanage his team or her
Well,
team.
it's oh, that's also a big question too. It's around, I think, control, and that's control is a very emotional word, right? And I won't go into fear, but that's to let go and let this person do the job, maybe not in the way they would have done it, but maybe in a different way, as long as the outcome is there. And again, that's having that vulnerability to have that discussion. That takes some while. It can take some people a while to change that habit. It's just a habit. And to your point about your question around time, or is it born in? That could be something that's been developed over time. If they were controlled as kids or in whatever other environments, or had bosses who controlled or were very quite micromanaging,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a way to manage as well.
No,
So
because
it can take time, and that's why let's look at it kind of piece by piece, and where can we see Chris is competent to let him go and actually getting good results or even better results than expected, and where do we say, okay, maybe I'll keep control for my own sanity, because I have this need to hang on to it. I'll keep control on this piece, and try to shrink that area of control, of the guy's work, and shrink that down.
yeah, no, really amazing. And the reason why I said that is because a lot of people associate micromanaging with insecurity,
Yeah.
not good leadership style. And I understand, there are two big leadership styles. You either
Oh,
lead by either respect, people respect you, or
yeah.
people, or you lead by fear, where
Sure.
people fear you. I'm not saying both of them are wrong. I definitely love people to respect their leaders, but also
Mm.
have that sense of urgency, when they see you, oh, my boss is right here, versus where they get really comfortable and feel like, they can do whatever. They're not being really proactive, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So I think both of the leadership styles are necessary. You definitely want people to respect you, and you also definitely want people to kind of, feel your presence,
Yeah.
right? And say, oh, Amy's here, and I really gotta get to work, because we're not here to babysit anyone.
Right.
We got to make sure that people are doing what they're paid to do. So
And that's going to go back to expectations. Is yeah, it's a job, and sure we can be friendly, but we're not friends. But
yeah,
we're not here to sit chit chat and jibber jabber all day long. We're here to get something done, whatever the larger mission is or the larger task at hand is. And so yeah, having that clarity around that, and not fear, yeah, but definitely to know that I'm here for mission, and I'm here to work with this person to get this mission done. And that's part of, definitely needs to be done. And I think to your point, in terms of some, if going back to Chris as an example, if they're very competent, some people do need more direction and guidance if they're newer in the career, or the task is new to them, or there's a new setup and maybe the manager does know more, or they have no more knowledge, and that's also for them to be more directive and guiding in whatever that thing is.
for sure.
Situational leadership is one of the theories that talks about this style where we can be very directive, and or very like let the person do their own thing.
For
And so
sure, for
that's
sure.
where managers need to know kind of where do I need to manage person by person, and even situation by situation.
And in these scenarios, do you really see, like, maybe I would say, what is the first thing that you really notice when you walk into a company?
Mhm.
What is the first thing that really come to mind about their people, about their leadership style, about
Yeah.
their culture?
Wow.
Is there any things that you really take a look at when
Yeah.
you go to a company?
Okay. Yeah.
What how do you assess?
Yeah. So actually, the people will think, oh, I mean, you're going to come in and do the handbook, and it's actually kind of some of the foundational piece, and they will do. But
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
what I notice is the things that's more intangible, and it's less, not the artifacts, but oftentimes it's born out of the what I call philosophy, like who are we as an organization, how do we work, how do we run, kind of what's our ethos. And then there's our policies, which can be the written or unwritten policies we have. And then yeah, the unwritten ones tend to be the practices, how we actually really work on a day-to-day basis. And that's of course what you see, what you feel when you really actually come into an organization and see how people work and how they interact with each other, how they respect each other, how they talk to each other, how much work is getting done. If you look at financials, you see the financials, if that reflects there. Um, so I'll look at, in terms of maybe artifacts, or what I'll look at is some of the job descriptions, and are people clear enough in their role, and is that matching where the organization is at and where they want to go? And then we'll also look at to make sure they have the infrastructure, like the payroll and the handbooks and some of the policies, and making sure that there's a clarity and we're compliant. I want to make sure those are all in place as well. It's easy, especially for a business owner like yourself, to run afoul and not be compliant of laws that aren't really that hard to follow. But if you don't know about them, you can't follow them. So let's just kind of get those easy wins off the table and get those set up, and then
First.
work on the things that people really want to, that impact them more on the day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So no, that's really a great way to put it. So to kind of go back to my question, are you able to identify um, when you walk into a company,
Mm.
into a building, and you meet that leader? Can you really tell what kind of leader he is? Are you able to identify if he's somebody that really doesn't do well with conflicts, somebody that doesn't do well with directions, somebody that doesn't do well with, giving out black and white directions and stuff like that? Are you able to read
Mm.
leaders, or it's more of a something that you have to really work with this person in order for you to get to know them,
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
it
that?
takes a little bit of time. I think to people always put on their best face right away. They usually put on their best face, or they put on their, yeah,
Yeah.
their desired public face, right? And then over time, we see kind of again those practices and how they play out and how people interact with them, their
Okay.
attitude toward people issues. Hmm.
Can you be a leader if you don't do well with conflicts? If you're somebody that doesn't like conflicts, can you be a leader? A good leader?
No, conflicts come in every day in every form and fashion. Ideally, we try to mitigate them or avoid. We can't avoid conflict, but mitigate things up front and deal with it quickly. Yeah, avoid, kind of the laissez-faire, the let it go, the conflict avoidance is really creates a chaos in the organization, and it will create kind of that pockets of infighting. So that's then you just have this kind of chaos.
Yeah, because I asked that because I've had issues with people in the past
Yeah.
where I really had to come in to
Mm.
address some issues
Yeah.
where my manager or leader weren't able to
Yep.
voice their opinion, and asking them why wasn't it done so. Oh, I didn't feel comfortable talking to that, to that person. So that's why I asked that question. And to the listeners and the business owners, I think it's
Mm.
very important to know that if you're a leader, um, conflict and uncomfortable conversations, they're gonna be in the mix.
Mm.
They're gonna happen, and it's something that really shapes you as a leader,
Mm.
as a manager.
Right. We talk about leaders and followers, and there's not just direction givers and order takers, but if you ideally, if we can um, come to the term is that having those conversations and whether it's conflict, of course, conflict is big and small, right? We always think conflict is this big, horrible thing. It can just even be like, what? How do we do it this way, or do this first or that thing first? The small decisions to let your people at least voice maybe an opinion, be clear around who's taking the decision, right? That's also, and also giving authority for people to make a suggestion in the organization. Maybe you take the final decision, but you're not going to see all the issues come up because they're going to see the conflicts oftentimes before you see them, right, on the shop floor or whatever, or with clients. Have them come to you so that you can get the air open, and that will help clear up the conflict sooner.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's since we spent some time on leadership and what happens in the workplace, let's switch gears for a little bit.
Yep.
Um, let's get to social, and the fun part, right? If someone felt like they weren't hired based on their religion, race, the skin of their color, obviously race, how would you go about that? How would you explain? How would you make sure that the company that you represent
Mm.
actually is an equal um, employer
Equal
who
opportunity
really,
employer.
yeah, who gives a shot to everybody based, and don't discriminate against any of that stuff that I said.
Right. Well, so right, that's Title 7 of the Fair Labor Standards. We have to get everything right, and Minnesota has a very strong health uh, Also, labor laws around protected classes and characteristics. So ideally, and again, ideally, but we have to be clear in the criteria for the role. So you're talking about hiring in this case. So what do you need to do perform the role? And can that person perform the role? Do they understand the requirements for the job? Do they um, have at least enough evidence that they can perform them or are able to learn them and perform them in a sufficient manner? And do they culture fits the wrong word, but do they show the attitude and the idea that, yeah, I think I can do this and I'd like to be part of this organization and do this job for you? So if we've got those objective criteria, we've got an objective way of vetting and questioning for that and deciding yes or no, this person has or doesn't have those qualifications, the competencies, the skills, and sort of the aspiration to do the job, we're fine. So if we don't have that, then that's hard to justify the decision why we did or didn't hire that
Yeah,
person
yeah.
for another reason, right?
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that again is, all the time that I've been, doing a business,
Yeah.
you see all sort of things, right? Seeing all, feedbacks where people felt like, we didn't hire them based on who they were. And obviously, none of my companies, are like that,
No, here's a you
right?
got a pretty big melange of people working for you. Yeah.
Right. So it's like we really hire the people that really are capable of
Yeah.
doing the job, right? So that's the one of the reasons why I asked to follow up with that. Do you really think it's suitable for a company take a social stance or get involved in politics, for example,
Mm.
right? That's a
No.
question
No,
that
that's
I've always wondered how HR professional would really view, with everything going on in the world. Do you really think a company should really say, we're gonna support this, or this has nothing to do with us and we're gonna be quiet, just do our job and maintain what we do? What do you think is the right approach there? I know you have a lot to say about that.
I probably, yeah, actually I do. We haven't really talked about this so much before, and I'd not seen that in your businesses. So I think I'll go ahead and say this. I think that it's not, unless it's the company's business to be vocal about political issues, social issues, environment, all the sort of hot topics. It's not their business. If it's not their business, it's not their business. Um, and I actually had this conversation with another client recently, where there was interest in the employee population to, address some either political or some other, international event going on. And we thought about it and thought, is that part of our business? Does this further our mission and our vision to talk about this topic? And we said no. And that's my point of view as well. There's enough going on in the world, and this is really Amy quite personally, but also I think bleeds into my professional stance, that there's enough going on in the world where we don't need to add to the drama and the chaos, and let's try to do good things. Our business, whatever, hopefully is a good business and does, serves coffee or brings kids to school or, help provide service for people when they need healthcare, which I know your business is, and does good things, right? And
Yeah,
spreads good messages. Let's focus on that and not add to the chaos and drama of other, especially negative things.
yeah, because the cancel culture is really
Yeah.
out there nowadays, right? Where people feel like you don't say something as a business owner, you're like, oh, this person doesn't really care about people. He doesn't care about, or they don't really care about, whatever is going on in the world. But I think I agree with you. And at the end of the day, we all choose how we run our businesses, right?
Yeah.
You just have to be true to your mission statement and the people that you serve, and the communities that you serve is what I think is best. And but I have to agree with you. There's a lot of stuff going on,
It
and you don't need
is.
to add anything to your plate. So
And it's so easy for a company to get in trouble for something that is really not their core mission. And there's enough room to get in trouble when you do things that are in your core mission. So don't add to that, don't add fuel to that fire. I think you can support your community and your constituency, your customer base in ways that will implicitly or indirectly express your values without having to disparage the other guy.
yeah, and to add to that, to be quite honest with you, and it's also important as well, I believe personally, that you know you go against anything that, because at the end of the day, you have certain clients, right?
Mm,
Certain people that really support your business. So supporting those people, supporting that group, supporting what brings you money is also
yeah.
important. So going against something that's terrible and stuff like that, I get it. But nowadays, you'll see a lot of companies. When I say a lot of companies, companies that get into politics
Mm,
for unnecessary reasons,
mm.
right? So that's the type of stuff that I really don't like to get involved and don't like to get into, and stay out of politics as much as you can.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I, I that's my take. That's my take. I think.
And it might take too, especially from a people perspective, a performance perspective, a business results perspective. If you are small, especially, you are, and I assume a lot of your listeners are small organizations, we only have 24 hours a day and only so much energy. Why put it on something that is not going to further our mission and help our people and help ourselves ultimately? They just, we don't have that time and that space to do that. I don't think. And I think people will, again, going back to maybe a minute before, it just diffuses energy. We want people focused on the tasks at
Task in
hand.
hand, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. Amy,
And that's
uh,
gonna and so that's gonna draw more followers to us, the more we do good things.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing. I don't know. There was an article that I've read. I think Intel's actually posted that the other day. Ben and Jerry's,
Oh, okay.
one of their founders, stepped down because he felt like
Oh.
um, whatever he wanted to say really didn't align with the where the company was going, or he didn't have the freedom to say whatever he
Mm.
would love to say,
Is this
because
recent or has this been
recent,
I think it's okay, recent, yeah.
yeah, recent, and he had to walk away from the company.
Yeah.
For scenarios like that,
Yeah.
if things like that happen, what would you say? What would your feedback would be?
Well, I think for sure in the case of Ben and Jerry's, they were bought by, I believe, Unilever, so a very large corporation,
Okay.
which has its own probably point of view and worldview. And of course, Ben and Jerry's was founded on community and being very local and very down to earth, to use that pithy saying. So sure, I can, and I think I've heard this, but whoever it was, if they felt they could not keep those values true, then fair enough. And that's, I guess, for all of us to, even though it's hard, it's easy to say, hard to do in the moment, is to follow that our values and stick to that, because we know we're going to find people out there who will resonate with us and we're on the same like wavelength and do things anyway. I'm sure it was hard for him to pull away from something that was his baby and he created, but doesn't that pulling away doesn't just diminish the value of what they created and the product and the company they created. And he can go on to do other things and use that same energy and that same ethos somewhere
Yeah,
else.
because I
Is that
think his personal values didn't align with the company values
right?
anymore,
Yeah.
and he felt like he couldn't speak freely
Right.
or what he wanted to say. So it's a tough part, And Amy, if you could tell our listeners, our leaders, one thing today that you could really improve their workplace culture, what do you want to tell our listeners and our business owners?
All right. Business owners, workplace culture, no matter where you are, you cast a big shadow. You do a lot. People look at you, they listen to you more than maybe you even realize. You're a role model, though, for people. So give them a chance to follow the best you can give. Give people a chance if they express interest and desire and have some ideas, let them try out. Otherwise, if you don't let them try out their ideas, they're going to go somewhere else where they can. Pay them well as best you can, especially in today's market. Otherwise, they will stick with you until they can go somewhere else to get paid better. And keep the lines of communication open. Do the right thing. Easy to say again. It's also easy to do, to make sure that you have good processes both in your operations and your people operations, your relationships with your vendors, will create a solid culture that even through the tough times they're going to stick with you and will be your best advocate.
Awesome. That's well put together. Um, and I want to move now. I want to move on to the next part of our discussion,
Okay.
pay.
Oh,
and
okay.
because I feel like it's a very important segment
Yeah.
on our show. What is I know there's minimum pay in Minnesota.
Yep.
I know there are overtime
Overtime rules.
threshold.
Yep.
Do you want to tell the people, our listeners, what is the overtime? I used to think it's 40, but found out in Minnesota it's actually 48 hours and more.
Federal overtime rules are 40 hours
Okay.
in a work week, which is a 7-day period. You have to define and tell your people what that is,
Mm.
and especially in many, many states like Minnesota also have wage disclosure laws. So, and then they're fair that people are getting smarter around, what their rate of pay is and what the basis for that is. And overtime is a piece of that. But you're right, in Minnesota has an exception. Don't quote me exactly on the rule. It's I think under $500,000 revenue. I think that's the key criteria
Okay.
where the 48-hour rule then will hold. But that's an exception in Minnesota,
So that those are companies that make 500,000 or less
right? I think
in a
it's
fiscal
good
year.
top line revenue. Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, so I was really surprised because I always used to think, for state, even for state, it's
Mm.
40 hours until I just realized that. Amy, thank you so much
Yeah.
for,
So yeah, I
yeah,
mean, of course, as maybe for the business owners, the trade-offs like great 48 hours overtime. Well, who can work that and wants to work that. Some people do,
yeah.
but B, I guess your goal would be to get over the $500,000 revenue threshold, right? That's probably everyone's aspiration.
Yes, yes, yes. Do you want to talk about the employee safe and sick time, the new family leave that's
Oh,
coming out?
okay. How much
I
time do we
feel,
have? Yeah.
yeah, we still got some time, but I
Yeah.
feel like
What
those are important topics that we really need to touch.
what
Uh,
what what are you hearing? What would be interesting to share, do you think, at this point?
For example, when is it proper to use employee safe and sick time? Because I've had people who really think um, you could use employee safe and sick
Mm,
time as a PTO,
yeah.
which is completely not right. Who can you use it for? Are you able to use that for a family member if
Yeah.
they're sick?
Yeah.
Is it only for you? Stuff like that. If you want to clarify
Yeah.
for
Yeah. I
our
guess
listeners.
the short of that safe sick time in Minnesota is there are, what they call qualifying reasons, and it's really for your own safety and sick, situations, but also caring and safe caring for family members. And it's a very defined list of people that you can take time off for. And you have to give an advance notice to the employer, especially if or as soon as you reasonably can. So yeah, it's not the same as like personal vacation time, unless the company has a bigger pot. But if they've got defined safe and sick time, then the employee has to use it for those covered situations and notify the employer. And the employer can ask for documentation after 2 days of absence that there really is, a real medical reason or a valid reason for that time. So that's a key one that we have to adhere to in Minnesota. And I'm still seeing employers not fully address that. So it's good to do. And, it's helpful for people if they are sick, and that's the honest intent, and real. We do see use cases that people now can take time off and get paid for it for scheduled time off when they normally should have been working. If they are sick or they have a kid that's sick and they have to deal with that they're not getting punished and not being able to earn some wage for that time.
Yeah. Great. And I would like to follow up with that. What I'd like to follow up with that would be in Minnesota, are you obligated to provide benefits, health, vision, dental, PTO?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Because a lot of people don't know and they feel like as a business owner, you're obligated to provide those benefits. Can you touch on that if
Yeah.
it's
Again,
personal, if
it's you don't have to. There's no mandated requirements in Minnesota to give benefits other than the safe and sick time, which is, you can accrue it or front load it. We can talk about the mechanics of that. So you have to give that. Um, Companies will have to start giving some retirement funds as of 2026, and there's the whole Secure Act, and there's quite a few, you know, pieces to that as well to help people save for retirement. But in terms of health insurance And are there dental and vision? Fortunately, no. There's no as a HR leader who also has a human focus in mind, and we're all humans and we all are going to get sick at some point.
Yes.
Employers don't in the US don't have to give any health insurance or other benefits like that. Now, it's good to do that if you can, because it's a big attractor and retention factor, right? Because
Yes.
we all get sick, right? Because we're people and we need health insurance. So if we can offer that, that's great. And there's a variety of mechanisms where you can either, give a proper, full health insurance plan or contribute partially to that, or some other kind of stipend that to help the person buy their own health insurance plans. But no, we don't have to.
No, definitely. It attracts a lot of the new employees, and
Right.
I've seen how really people when they ask, it could be really beneficial to your company. Amy, I really want to appreciate you coming down today.
Yeah, sure.
Um, to our listeners, our business owners, I hope that you learned so much from Amy as much as I did. Even though I've known her for quite some time,
Mhm.
I feel like I always learn something new from her. And until our next episode, this is it. Stay safe, stay consistent, and we'll see you on our next episode.